Cool. Looks like we should be live. Thanks everyone for joining another episode of the excuse me, OpenJS Foundation's Cross-Project Council meeting. Today's the second day of the third month. Yeah, thanks everybody for joining. How about we get started with some announcements?
Oh, we have lots of them today. So first off, tomorrow is the JS Trends panel that we're doing. This is going to go out on YouTube like our AMAs. Really excited about this. It's a continuation of that panel that we've been doing the last couple of years at OpenJS World, and Alex Williams and Liz Parody and Chris Andacek and Nick Nisi are all going to just get together and talk. And we had sort of like a preview chat yesterday that was super fun. So if you're available to, tune in for that live, would love to have you. But also just be on the lookout and help us promote that, because it's going to be it'll be a fun combo. So that's tomorrow at like 11 or noon Eastern. Can't remember suddenly. I think it's
1 Eastern. I'm trying to get all my time zones together. I think it's 10 Pacific, noon Central, 1 Eastern.
Got it.
I'll double.
Who cares about Mountain? Nobody lives in Mountain.
Dylan's not on this call, so he can't defend the Mountain time.
Dylan's on Pacific for this.
Oh, that's right.
Arizona doesn't switch.
Not to mention every other time zone in the world, but go on.
Okay, so the next things are the standards working group is meeting next week, and we've got lots of comments in so far on our different strategic directions. We've talked to several projects. We still want to talk to more projects. So if you are at all interested in informing how the standards working group can impact web standards, or also provide value to your projects, please let us know in the hash standards channel in Slack workspace so we can set up time to talk. We also, just freshly this morning, have 2 proposals that we want to develop for further review. So if you're interested in getting involved, please chime in and let us know. It also happens that next week we conflict with the CPC working group meeting, which is next Tuesday as well. So we're going to have to just do a little switch up and watch the issues for an update on the standards working group time change so that we can make that happen. And then book club, that's another thing that's happening. We're going to make a thing. If you're interested in talking about Nadia Eghbal's latest book, Working in Public, we're tentatively scheduling that for March 24th. And so that's going to go on the public calendar. Or if you just want to share books or papers or things you've been reading, the hashtag book club channel in Slack is quite fun. We're having a good time. So join us for a book club meeting and we'll talk about that. You can have tea or wine, whatever your time zone. And then OpenJS World, I want to say thank you to everybody who submitted. We're in the act of reviewing CFPs right now, and thank you to those who are taking time to do that. The programming committee is meeting again on Thursday. We meet every Thursday, and we'd love to have you. Just again, these are events that are on the public OpenJS calendar, so you can add that to your calendar and get the notification in your local time. And that's what I have for announcements today.
Yeah, and not only, we have the meeting coming up, but also we're looking for folks to help review CFPs, right? So if anybody wants to help, please let us know. And, the more the merrier there for sure. Cool. Anything board related?
We had the board meeting last week. I don't remember anything specific. Sarah, do you remember anything?
No, nothing decided that I'm still new to this, but nothing decided that I think is new to this group.
Congratulations on your first meeting, Sarah.
Thank you. Thank you. I learned a lot.
Great. Cool. So I will jump into the agenda then. And the first thing on the list here is criteria to move to emeritus, or however people say that. I think some people say it differently. and I never know what's right in the world. So this is an issue. I'm trying to catch my brain up here. Did we have a PR that references this too? Yeah, there's a couple things here. Toby created an offboarding checklist, which was merged, and then we have the Emily created a 2/3 vote for emeritus, required consent rather than 2/3 vote. There's some comments.
Wasn't that blocking on board approval?
Yeah.
So that reminds me, we did have the vote on that. And that's something we should have brought back. So yes, that was approved. The question that actually came up was with or without the comments, because there's some comments making suggestions. So the net was the board approved this with or without the comments. So we should either accept the 2 comments that are there and land, or not accept the 2 comments and land. It would be good for us to decide which, and then, if we want to change it after that, we would potentially need to go back for another vote.
And so another vote would be, it could be done over email or something. So
Yeah, we can do it over email if we want to. We've hopefully maximized the chances here of, if there's consensus to, Toby had made a couple of suggestions, right? It's basically in cases where there's lack of project ownership, a 2/3 vote from the DP is required. In cases, a slightly bigger change was what was being suggested.
Yeah, Toby, do you want to comment here?
Yeah, I was trying to find the issue. Sorry. Yeah, I think essentially what I was suggesting was to be more clear about the fact that if the project maintainers didn't respond, the CPC could just make a decision by itself. And in both, and just simplified, in all cases, it was consensus driven and didn't necessarily require 2/3 of the voices in one case and the other, because I just didn't really see why one case would need more of an agreement than the other.
I think I wanted to weigh in just to share contextually that this has occurred twice so far in our foundation's history, where a project has wanted to move into emeritus. In one case, the project maintainers were interested in moving on and were either going to transition the project to emeritus, or if they weren't able to find maintainers to take over the project, we were able to do that. And so we transitioned that to new leadership, and the project is still going strong as an at-large. And then the second case is this more recent case with PET, where we've actually, I should say, I've actually been working with Patrick Locke and some of the folks on the jQuery side for several months, preparing for these final kind of things, and just didn't do a very good job surfacing that this was going to happen. So, I think we've had 2 different examples of sort of like the project moving to a different thing, and that we can kind of learn from.
So should we make a decision on these comments, or what
I think that would be good. Like if we can agree and just land, because we either have like delay if we don't agree with one of the 2, which is like with or without the comments. And I don't know if we need to delay unless people are like have strong feelings kind of thing one way or the other.
I mean, this is not a big issue, right?
No.
Like I literally, like you can,
Yep.
Personally, I just added a comment because I thought it made more sense this other way. But like I literally don't care.
Yeah, and that's where I'm like, if people just look at it and say yes, let's just add them and land it. If people don't immediately see yes, let's land it as is, and we could handle it as a follow-on if we think it's important enough.
I think if it brings more clarity, then we should just accept it and move forward.
Yeah, I'm a +1 for just adding those comments.
All right. Well, we got a couple +1s. Cool. Well, let's just do that then.
Okay. So I will add a comment saying, we agreed to add in the CPC meeting, there was consensus for these comments and based on the board approval, we can handle any further discussion tweaks through a follow-on.
Cool. And maybe drop that in the notes too. I will move on.
Yep.
The next issue is 711. This is rename master branches. We've got a checklist here. So this is an issue. And we've got a checklist here that has a few things left over. Toby, Michael did a whole bunch of work, so thank you for that. And then there's a later on checklist that we've only got a couple of checked off as well.
Yeah, I've been following that, so I can speak a little bit to it. Sendil's been doing a lot of work in terms of submitting PRs, so thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
What I wanted to request here was sort of a mass fast track. It seems to me this falls into the we're not really changing anything category. And so how can we not have to chase people to get, approvals and all that? Like maybe we can sort of here do an approval to land all of these. What do people think with that? Or is it it's perfectly fair to say, no, let's just follow their standard process too. I'm just thinking of how do we efficiently handle things which really aren't changing anything in terms of, actual content.
So I'm happy to do mass fast track here. I just think the question is getting the right eyeballs to check that we're not making mistakes. And I also don't think it's a common enough issue to actually add some process to do this. Let's just do it for this time and be done with it.
Exactly. It's a one-timer. And if we actually break something, well, there'll be a broken link somewhere, right? I don't think it's a huge impact either. So
on the web, a broken link.
Exactly. It'll be the first one, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was going to say these are all a lot of just mastered ahead changes, yep. And I'm all for just kind of moving forward on those.
So maybe what I was suggesting is I can open an issue which is one issue which is fast track approval for these set of links, and if a few people can just sort of go through and plus one that, we'll assume that 2 or 3 TSC members, or sorry, CPC members doing that is enough, and then we can go land them all. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and the links would be links to the PRs that are making the changes, and the assumption would be anybody who kind of gave the fast track approval also went through and just looked at them and kind of verified that that's there's nothing beyond those kind of search and replace sort of things.
Basically have done enough to say, yeah, comfortable these landing, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, if you could just make that clear in the comments,
yep.
I'd be happy to help there. So if you want to, tag me or whatever, I'll jump in.
Sure. Yeah, I'll basically create an issue, copy that we've got right now 8 PRs. So I'll just copy the links which are in this issue in the fast track request. I'll CC you and CPC in general, and hopefully we'll get 2 or 3 people and then go ahead and land them.
Sounds good.
Sounds good. Okay.
And then does that wrap up this issue? Would that wrap up this issue as well?
There's still a couple, there's OpenJS user feedback that somebody needs to take a look at.
Okay.
And test easy CLA. So if you look at that list, there's two which are private. So I think actually the private ones are probably okay since they're not public anyway. So the last 2 public ones, I think we really want to look at are the easy CLA and the user feedback. So once we look at those and have a PR, then we can close them out.
Okay, cool. That makes sense. I can try to look at those soon, and then we can maybe include it in that fast track.
Sounds good.
All right, great. Excellent. This issue, I'm surprised to see, is 707. This is the primary CPC director election, which is closed. And I will,
Yeah, I closed it a few minutes ago.
great, thank you. Improving diversity and inclusion at the OpenJS Foundation. We've kind of worked on this in a couple of working sessions. So if Sarah or Toby or anyone else wants to give any sort of, bit of an update, that'd be great.
All right, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, either of us is great. I think so. Last we met, we talked about opening the survey past just the CPC, as it's such a small group that it would be easy to identify who we are. It's not very anonymous. Our goal, so our next steps, as I understand them, Toby, correct me if I'm wrong, are to find someone that could work with us on the data science level to make sure that that we're being thoughtful about survey data in general, as well as to have things reviewed by the legal team when they are ready. I do not believe we have a final version of the survey. Toby, am I?
And we
Yeah.
don't.
So now that so that may be next steps. We can spend next week working on it, or we can actually maybe take a stab sometime over the next few days, getting at least a first version together, so that we can spend next week discussing it. I think, yeah, that's as much as I view of next steps.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I frankly felt a bit overwhelmed by the complexity of actually running a survey like this, following our conversation last week. What's interesting, however, is I was in W3C's equivalent of this discussion this afternoon, and they're exactly exactly at the same place as we are. Thinking, oh, it would be really useful to do a survey to understand our membership better and see, what's up and who's doing what, and essentially asking the same questions. So it feels like there was some interesting opportunities in the future to have discussions with them. They suggested joining our call next week if we were open to that. So I don't know if that's actually possible. I imagine it is. But I think, that might be like an interesting way forward to actually create some assets that could be and process that could be used by multiple organizations, not just ours, and also maybe share the workload a bit more.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic that they join. We did, Jory and I talked to our legal counsel about that. We do have GDPR data retention issues to consider, best practices on anonymization, aggregation, and then how do you dump that data? How do you handle it? And we actually will be doing, have more resources inside the Linux Foundation on research. They're initially recommending our legal counsel that we look at a third party who does that, who can handle it safely. So lots of things to consider. But yeah, I think we should probably reconvene next week. I don't know if you would have an urgency to create that testing tool just yet until we solve the data privacy issue.
That sounds like a good plan.
Makes
So
sense.
maybe as next steps, just have a conversation next week again.
Sounds good.
Wonderful.
Great.
And thank you for checking into all of that. That's great. And it's great to have clarity, because I felt that we were sort of like missing a lot of clarity there. So that's a great outcome. Thank you.
Yeah. So I think it's pretty clear that we're, as we are today, I don't think we're equipped to collect and, manage that data. So we have some work to do.
Awesome. Thank you.
So if I could repeat that back to you. So I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think being thoughtful about this stuff is great. Would you say probably in the meantime, do you think our best next course of action is, I know you put together a list of resources that are super valuable. I can imagine that those resources might be helpful to share if people were looking for help in their particular project. I suppose a question for people in this group who are involved in projects is this something people are looking for? Is this something that would be received well? Is this something that it seems like people are interested in? You know, we've been focusing on maybe proving a need to people before providing them with the resources. I wonder if it makes sense to skip that part, or, you know, while we're learning about it in the meantime, provide resources.
So that's, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, so is this the, like, let's move ahead without waiting for the survey tape data, or is it something different than that?
I'm just wondering if that would make sense. Yes, if we feel like the survey data, if we feel like these things need to happen in a specific order, or if with the survey data, once we have the you know, like if the survey data will influence the resources that we share, or if, you know, we can identify if there is a problem kind of async, if that's beneficial.
Right. Okay. I just wanted to clarify, like, the thought I had since the last meeting was that I don't think we need data to agree that there's something we should address, right? Like, I think everybody's, you know, we're not trying to figure out if there's something to address or not. The value of the data, in my mind at least, is being able to show going forward that what we've done has actually made a difference. So in that context, I'm like totally on we should define what we want to do. It shouldn't wait on getting data or anything like that. The data should just be something that says, like, a year from now, we can say that these 5 things which we did actually changed the numbers. So I think that's a long way of saying, you know, I agree with the idea of just moving forward without blocking anything on that.
So I agree with you, Michael. I'd like to point out that the other part of the conversation that we had at W3C today was precisely about this question, right? So what do we share? Why is it useful to a constituency? Do they care about it? How can they help? How much do we share? Do we do that now, et cetera, right? So I think you know, that really brings me to think that a conversation, if we can bring some of W3C's people over, it would be great to try to solve these, you know, have their input to that too. And to be clear, one of the questions that was brought up is, how much do we share? Like, how much is it good to share? Is it good to share like a lot of information at the risk of sort of like overwhelming people with like things that they're supposed to do? Do you just share like, you know, tiny amounts to really help sort of like guide people through like, you know, succeeding steps? Like, how do you do that? Was also questions that were asked today.
Yeah, I think that's a key point. Like, I think, you know, the simpler the better in my mind is I know if you're faced with like, hey, go read this 100 things and get on top of the whole issue, that's a much bigger ask than here are 3 things you can do to help, right?
Makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, yes. I also think that, like, I think the question is that valuable or is that noise? I think it's hard to establish that, figure out what the answer to that is.
There's a symbolic dimension to having an organization like ours actually, you know, publicly put out resources, though. Both in terms of what that says and also in terms of like vetting some resources at the expense of others. That's also something to consider.
Yeah. Robin, do you know anyone at Chaos by any chance, or do you have any?
Yeah, I know
George
at Chaos.
Do you think they would be interested in partnering? Is that a crazy idea?
No, I think we would be a great sort of real world use case. I do encourage you all to read their content because they have some pretty good documentation. It's pretty concise. So we're not starting at zero, but yeah, I'm sure they would partner with us. So I'll invite him or one of his folks to our next planning session.
That sounds amazing. That would be really helpful, I think, as I don't want to speak for all of us, but I've definitely heard from everyone individually that we're a little bit out of our depth, but really well-intentioned. Right. Sometimes that is very dangerous.
It is, right?
Yeah.
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 Yeah, I'm glad we're having like a frank discussion about this topic today, because I felt like, the same concern.
Jory, you dropped something in the chat.
I did. So this is adjacent to this conversation, but there's a community on the Sustain OSS Discord that's been meeting around, diversity, equity, and inclusion, the topic du jour. And one of the things that they're kind of trying to build out, which is related to what we've been discussing, is sort of like a checklist of things that projects can do to signal that they are a welcoming community. And so this is just a HackMD with some of that initial kibitzing, so to speak. And so if you were interested in helping to build that out, I'm sure that this could possibly be useful. But again, adjacent to what we're doing, not the same.
Cool. If anybody could drop maybe just a couple of bullet points into the doc for this issue, that might be helpful. And otherwise, well, we'll talk about next week's working session in a few minutes once we get through our agenda. So in the interim, I'll move on unless we want to talk about this any further. Cool. Great. So moving on, the next item is Google Summer of Code 2021. The deadline is passed, so I don't know if we should just close this issue. Does anybody have any objection to that? I'm not sure. Brian's not here. I'm not sure if we've had any interest. So I will close it.
Yeah, I would say just close it.
Cool. Next up is the provide implementation guidance for DCO and CLA. Toby, would I refer to you on this, or is Brian working on this?
Yeah, no, like I did my point. Like, we're just waiting on Brian to do. It's been so long, I don't remember what it is, but like I know, like I don't have anything to do with it anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
And I don't mean this, by the way, just to be clear, to like this on Brian not having done the thing. Like, there's a whole bunch of reasons why it's been taking time. I don't remember what it is about anymore. Like, he had to do something, and I don't know what it is.
So there was an upstream PR series of PRs that he was making into the ProBot DCO bot, which is a fun thing to say, ProBot DCO bot, and those were being reviewed and incorporated so that we could then have a DCO bot tool that we recommended out. That was the thing that we were blocked on.
You have so much more context than I do. I'm just glad you provided that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's been having good conversations with the maintainer on that. So.
Oh, great. And recently or
Yes, yeah.
Okay, great. So it's still a hot potato.
Yeah.
Maybe Jory or someone could just pop a little note in this issue. That would be great. Even though I know Brian has more context, something might be helpful. Cool. And then last on the agenda is the sunsetting checklist. Moving over to the project status repository and cleaning up some templates. We've got some approvals here, and it's met the time limit, so it could land, but if folks want to take a look at it, they're welcome to.
It's really fairly straightforward, right? It's the other thing that we agreed to, just brought to that repository as it should be. So there's like nothing new in there.
So it sounds like, Toby, if you want to go ahead and land, and if there's no more comments by tomorrow or something, you should feel free to do that.
Okay, I'll land it the next time I look at it.
Perfect. So that is it for our agenda. We maybe Jory remembered the half thing that she was going to mention, and then we can talk about next week's working session, which is perhaps related.
Yes, so we did want to report that we had one issue from a code of conduct issue surfaced from a project that was delegated to the reports group. And we're taking a moderation action on behalf of the grant project. But we also agreed in our conversation that as part of our transparency of process that we should probably start reporting to the CPC when these groups meet and take an action. So just transparently reporting that that's happened or happening.
Great, thank you. So it seems like there's D&I work that we could do for next week, and there was mention of maybe working on moderation in some working session, but maybe we just save that for a future working session.
Sorry, what moderation?
The COC report recently, and just kind of making sure that our processes in place and that we handle things properly, and that we have maybe even document some more about reporting to the CPC and whatnot, just kind of making sure that we're doing our due diligence. And we kind of did some work and then we let it sit, and then now something happened, and I want to make sure that we're doing things right, and that things are properly documented and such.
That's great. I'm actually, yeah, that's great that we're thinking about it. I don't know if I missed a meeting or if this is another context. I'm not aware of that situation, but I think that seems, if the focus is D&I support, and that seems like, I don't want to, Toby, I'd love to hear your thoughts, and I don't mean to hijack, but if focus is D&I support, that seems like a really good nut to crack as well. I wonder if we could do both, or I wonder if we could work on them in tandem.
I just pasted 2 links in, which is our current, we do have a documented process.
Yeah,
the 2 links in. I think, Joe mentioned we might need to, we discussed some updates, and I don't think we just closed on those. So
yeah,
I think with a lot of our processes, they were developed when the foundation was formed, and this is the first time that we've applied a real world scenario. So you just learn, and so you may have to do some more documentation or just clarification. So
yeah. And I don't know how to say this, but I think if so, for example, Sarah, if you have an interest in this sort of work, I know, if you wanted to be on that email list and a part of the group that responds to these sorts of things, or anyone on the call, I think it's fair to say, just let us know and we'll include you.
Yeah, please. I do that. It's kind of my job, my
Great.
day job. So that sounds great.
Great.
If the question, Sarah, that you asked earlier was, should we work on this next week because there's an emergency instead of on something else? And also these 2 things are related, i.e. a broken code of conduct is not really conducive to an inclusive environment. I think that's a very good point, right? And I don't think, it's probably actually more effective to organize the calls that we want to do was George from Chaos and the W3C, and it was a longer time span than a week anyway. And so maybe we can, do all of these things in parallel and focus on this next week.
Jory?
Yeah, I just want to clarify, our process actually has worked really well. It's highlighted some gaps that we want to fill. So the group and the reporter are very pleased with our SLA on this so far. So this has actually been good, but it's highlighted some things that we can improve on. And I just want to just say that out loud. This was not a broken process this time.
do it, Jory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there is a lesser sense of urgency too as a result, I assume.
Yeah, I wouldn't consider it urgent. I just thought since it's topical, since it's fresh, maybe it makes sense to just clarify some things, review, discuss.
it does seem like it's a good, when it's fresh in the minds is a good time.
Yeah, and it seemed to me, correct me if I'm wrong, but with the other initiative, it wouldn't be bad to wait a week. Like Toby said, plan to meet with somebody, some folks, and come regrouped.
Yeah, and as I was, I think it's important to, like, this is actually something that has concrete impact on how people feel in the community.
Yeah.
Which is kind of different than running a survey.
Yeah.
In terms of impact.
And I think immediately kind of, for lack of a better term, retrospecting and taking it very seriously also is good. Great. So then the plan will be to work on that next week and tentatively plan for more D&I work the following working session.
If you can share upfront the timings of both of those so that I don't screw it up when I actually reach out to people to try to get them involved, that would be wonderful.
I was going to just say the same thing, or
Oh.
Toby, maybe you and I coordinate
Sure.
offline.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
And to be clear, the working sessions now are in the calendar, the OpenJS calendar. And it's essentially the working session is always at the same time in the following week of the most recent meeting. So like this time next week. And then, when we do the earlier meeting, the immediately following working session is at that same time, if that makes sense. I feel like I make it more confusing when I actually say it out loud. But that's part of the reason why I put it in the calendar. So, and then I think if we get to a point where we don't have anything for next week's working session, I would just go and delete that calendar invite so that it's not on people's calendar. Cool. Maybe Jory, you and I can offline async, just, some sort of agenda for next week, and we can go from there. Great. Is there anything else that we want to or need to talk about? I can't think of anything.
Well, there's like a ton, but like for today in the next 15 minutes, probably not.
Yeah.
If we're being honest.
Yeah. Cool. Well, then I'll let everybody go unless anybody wants to hang out and chat.
I'd love to hang out and chat for a few, but only if people want to.
I'm 1000% sure this observation has been made, but Joe, it seems like a real oversight to have not painted that wall green.
Green, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you can chroma key on any color. So
true.
Okay, great. Yeah, good.
Yeah. This was my son's like hangout playroom, and then we switched, and so now I have it. But I do like the blue wall. It confuses my camera a lot. I always have to go in and adjust its settings to like try and make me not be like really bright red. But yeah, it is a nice wall. I like it.
It's great.
I like it too.
Here's a topic of business. Gordon just reminded me that next week is the TC39 meeting. And so if you would like to, weigh in on anything, feel free to harass your local TC39 rep on the proposals you care about. Just kidding. Obviously that's a joke. But it's worth going and taking a look at the agenda for those interested and
The deadline for adding things for advancement was last Saturday morning. So theoretically, all the important stuff that's there, that's going to be there, is on there.
Theoretically.
So I'll ask a selfish question. Do our reps ever come back and kind of say like, here's what happened at the meetings?
Do they ever come back? It's
And
like
was-
they go to the meeting and they're like,
I meant like, it's sort of like, here's what you needed to know if, when you weren't there kind of thing, or what's important to the OpenJS Foundation, or because I'd be really curious, but I admit I'm not going to spend the time to go figure that out on my own.
That's a great question. I mean, we do in the standards working group sort of discuss if there's something that seems particularly, but one of the things that we're trying to kind of systematize is how to make that more useful, like a more useful potential broadcast out to projects, like here's a proposal that's interesting maybe to you and how it will impact and that kind of thing. So that's one of the sort of sub projects that we're trying to carve out and make some progress on. So come on up to the next working group meeting and help us figure that out there, Michael Dawson.
Okay.
Well, the next one is conflicts with the working session. So.
And the meeting itself. So it looks like probably the simplest thing will be for us to postpone our standards working group meeting that I was so excited about earlier on the call. But if most of our group is going to be, either on the working group call or at the meeting, makes the most sense. So.
All right, cool.
One last thing, just a shout out. If any of you all project people are shipping anything, please flag to Rachel, even just ballparking, if it's coming in a week, a day, a month, 2 months, just so she can get it on her editorial calendar and we can make a big splash.
I'm reminded in Slack, the Node.js social team, which is just Tierney and me, has a group handle. You can do at Node.js social team, and he and I will both get alerted. I wonder, everybody knows that Rachel's the person to mention, but if we had a shorthand OpenJS social or OpenJS PR, that might be easier for everybody to remember and tag. I don't know. We don't have a lot going on, so maybe it doesn't matter. Jory got a keyboard.
Yeah, so these just came in the mail and they're gorgeous and I'm so excited.
Nice.
The keyboard keys, I just have to share since we're at that stage of the meeting.
We'll hear you clanking in future meetings. I got a refurbished Apple Magic Keyboard, and I think it's is it from China? I'm not familiar enough to know, but I've got extra characters and stuff.
Cool.
Yeah. So I like looking at that.
That is cool, Joe.
I also got a motorcycle recently. What else can we talk about?
Be careful.
It's actually my second. I got to sell the old one, but yeah, it's exciting.
Anybody else getting into dangerous hobbies that you want to share?
Like keyboards and
Expensive,
motorcycles?
dangerous hobbies?
Yeah.
Yesterday, I talked my partner out of battle boats. And then his friend were
Wow.
talking about that being a fun idea. That doesn't sound like a fun idea.
Isn't that what happened at a Trump parade or something? Sorry, never mind.
I'd watch that TV
I'm
show.
100% sure, yes.
I'd watch that TV show too.
We're still live, you know that.
Yeah, we're still live.